last fall in DC, and that was during a walkaway march. You were one of the speakers there. I remember like feeling so inspired when we were speaking. I'm like, I really want to go up to him and talk to him, but there were so many people around you. I started walking away, and my friend said, okay, here's your time. Go and talk to him. Because actually in my head was like, oh, I'll just send him an email afterwards, and she's like, that's definitely not how you network.
It wouldn't have worked. That's why I give people my phone number. It's easier to just reach me that way.
Are you a walkaway yourself?
I am a walkaway, but to be fair, I think I was probably conservative the entire time, but and at this point I didn't really vote. The only person that I voted for up until this point was Barack Obama in 2008, and 2012 I voted for Ron Paul the second go around. But the first time I went for Obama because everyone in my community went for Obama. Everybody we know is Obama, you know, first black guy, Democrat, and it just seemed like that was the way forward. But as time started to progress, and when I came back home from the military, I started to see how my community completely changed. My neighborhood changed. People are protesting. People were upset with what was going on with Occupy Wall Street. And I started to see how Barack Obama was being funded by the same people that were funding the other side. And I just was like, this isn't what I really think it is. And it was at this point that I began to really question my political beliefs and the things that I stand for. I work, so I see taxes come out of my paycheck. I'm pretty sure when you were like 16, 17, you first started working, you learned about taxes, you realized it wasn't too good. I started to see how my money would be taken, but used for things that I didn't necessarily agree with. You know, even though I'm a veteran, I didn't agree with the wars that Barack Obama was putting our country in and kind of just poking the bee's nest and making things worse. I felt like there were a lot of ways that our government could be more, quote unquote, conservative. And when I started to dig a little bit more into my beliefs, I found out that a lot of the things I identify with are the things that Ron Paul's been talking about for decades. And at that point I said, you know, I was wrong this entire time. And I think that's what a lot of people in our younger generation are like. They support ideas that sound good on paper, and in theory they would be really good, but when you really get down to the logistics of it all, they don't really seem to work out. But the problem is, there's no one, or there's not a lot of people in my generation in the conservative movement that are going out and giving a different message or giving an alternative to let people know that there's more that can be done than just depending on the government, depending on raising taxes and taxing the rich and all these things that sound good but actually end up harming our country in the long term. At some point, the people that are under 18, the people that are 18, 20, 30 years old, at some point, they're gonna have to start businesses. They're gonna have to go and buy houses. Most of them are drowning in student loan debt and have no idea which direction they're gonna go into. But they'll support policies that'll only make life more difficult into the future. So one of the things that I wish to bring to the table with politics is not just the positions that I stand for, the things that I believe, but I like to actually go out into the community and talk to the people, which is something I don't see a lot of Republicans doing in areas like mine. In Patterson, it's heavily Democrat. The 9th District as a whole is heavily Democrat, and it's not because it's not because our party. I mean, it's not because the Democrats are the majority party. The truth is, the ideas of Democrats have been pushed so far into the mainstream that there aren't enough Republicans going out there to go and counter that. But when you speak to these people face to face, you meet these people, you realize we have a lot more in common than most people, right? But it seems to be the left trying to divide it. And I believe the key to changing our country, to changing our state and our community is to reach out to the younger groups. These are the ones with the energy, these are the ones that are voting. Even look at the numbers, the Republicans are predominantly in the older generation. And things are really changing in 2021, you know, but 2020 was a really good thing because someone like Donald Trump coming in as a random person, right? And contrary to popular belief, I was never a fan of the guy. I actually hated him my whole life until about, you know, he decided to run in 2016, and I saw that he was trying to bring a different vision for America. For the first time in a long time, for many people, it felt good to be an American. It felt like we were going somewhere. We're going in a specific direction. Less than 3 months into this presidency, and our country's on the brink of falling apart. I mean, right now we have a massive hack that just happened to one of the largest oil pipelines in the United States, and New Jersey may possibly be facing a crisis unless this gets resolved. But when we have incompetent leadership, they're going and saying things like fossil fuels are harming the environment. These are the things that we need to get rid of. We need to put the Green New Deal in place. Mm-hmm. It sounds good, but there's no one out there to counter that. And that's why I decided to get involved.
A lot of what you just said, I certainly can relate to as a walkaway myself. And I would say that my values never changed. It was just my understanding of the world is what changed when I started really looking into the issues and looking beyond what was being said versus what was the practical implication into our society of certain legislation. What are some of the things that you saw about what are the promises that have been made versus what actually has been put into place, and then where things fail to reconcile and fail to deliver, and what do you see doing differently?
I'll give you a perfect example. I was going to get really long-winded with that answer while I was hearing it, but I'll give you a perfect example. When I was in D.C. not too long ago, a couple months back, a little bit before Joe Biden went into the White House. A lot of the people that were there, we're talking months prior, you were in DC not too long too, a lot of the people that we met that were in support of Joe Biden were going around saying how he would unite the party, he'd bring the party together, he'd end racism, he'd do all these things, right? Even though this is the guy that put forth the 94 crime bill, right? Mm-hmm. The second he got elected, what happened? Do you remember what happened? People were rioting outside, they were tearing apart the country, and literally everything he said didn't happen. He's gonna forgive student loan debt, didn't happen. You know, so I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now, it's going to take somebody to really come out with and be honest and do what they say they're going to do. We don't currently have that with our commander in chief. But the truth is, a lot of the things that push our country forward start on a local level. Not a lot of people are aware of that yet, though.
Billy, thinking through some of the practical implications, I know when I was reviewing your website, you had an idea for the not Ja Rule bill, which I thought it was Ja Rule at first, but the Ja Rule bill that deals with police accountability. Can you elaborate more about your ideas with the Ja Rule bill? So
the Ja Rule bill, it stands for the Justice Accountability and Reporting Officers Bill, and it's a three-pronged bill that takes care of three different things. It creates a bridge of transparency between the community and the police departments by allowing for investigative boards that are ran by the community themselves, and these communities would have to work hand in hand with the local police departments. The reason why something like this, I believe, needs to be necessary is there's a lot of incidences that I've seen. Unfortunately, a few have happened in my own city where there would be a police-involved incident and the police department would give their explanation of what the case was, and whether it was true or not is besides the point. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, no matter what was said, the community doesn't believe that. So what do we do to actually bridge that gap? So I believe just like how we have elected sheriffs, we also have to create a community investigative board that would be elected by the people, and these people would be responsible for working with the police. If there was ever a situation where we lose faith in this person, or let's say this person gets corrupted, or they're being stonewalled by the police departments themselves, that brings apart the second part of the Ja Rule bill, where the Department of Justice would create an investigative police force, similar to something that we dealt with in the United States Air Force, was something called OSI, Operation of Special Investigations. And what their job was to investigate the ranks of the Air Force to ensure that the people that were in the Air Force were not doing shady, illegal activities. Mm-hmm. They had no allegiance to your generals, they had no allegiance to anybody in your community. Their job was to find the people doing the wrong thing and go back home. That was it. There's nothing like this that exists with the police departments. And the third thing about the Ja Rule bill that would ensure something like this would work is an accountability and training record. So, like I was asking, do you believe that being a police officer is a simple career?
Not at all.
It's not. It sounds easy on paper, but it's really not. So what this bill actually does is it creates a record of everything that officer has been trained, everything that they've learned. And I understand that some local police departments are going to be different, but there should be a national understanding that a police officer needs to go through before they can actually be a police officer. You can't go and cut someone's hair without renewing your hairstylist license. You can't cut someone's heart open as a heart surgeon without renewing it. And honestly, saving lives ain't easy. So you can't go out there and save lives without the appropriate training. I think it's perfectly rational and it's right. Mm-hmm. Now, if someone goes out and does the wrong thing, there's nothing that the police departments, the unions, or anybody can do to help you. So with a situation like this, I believe if you want to say someone's a bad officer, fine. Right? If you want to say this person's not doing good, fine. But the community now has a bridge where they can work with the police. So now you're in there, right? You no longer trust the police, you no longer trust the community. Well, now the federal government can work and deal with that. And they have no allegiance to you. And there's a record of everything that's been done. So at the end of the day, if you're an officer, you have three choices, whether you're doing the right thing or the bad thing. You either do the wrong thing and you get caught, you do the right thing, you stay a cop, or you quit. You give it about 5 to 10 years, I believe that this would clear up the issues that we have. If officers are taking the time to better their education, learn more skills, I believe these officers should be compensated. These should be the officers that are on the forefront. These should be the ones that are promoted to encourage other officers onto the force. So I don't see any practical solution coming from the left other than get rid of the police, and that's not practical.
How has the Defund the Police movement, how has that impacted your community? And you had mentioned earlier that your opponent is actually for Defund the Police. Is your community in line with wanting to defund the police?
No. From what I've seen, no. The only people I see really talking about wanting to end the police are the people that are super progressive, that are super socialist, they really want to get rid of it. What I will say is this, my opponent was supported by the police his entire career while he was in Congress. 2020, when we ran, was the first year where they deliberately did not endorse him. They didn't want to endorse him. And after speaking with them, and I don't want to put too much shade on them, but after speaking with several of the officers and several people in the PBA, it's because they feel that they've been supporting him. They've always had his back. They've always came out for him, but he would always stab them in the back at the last minute. And seeing someone like me who's coming out and talking about the things that no one else is talking about, he's talking about wanting to sign the George Floyd bill and removing qualified immunity from police officers and making it even harder for you to want to be a cop. It's like, why would you want something like that? Who's going to suffer from that the most? The communities like mine. Every single day, even 3-4 days ago, I was on an interview and there was someone getting shot, like not too far away from my house, like while we were live on air. It's something that happens every single day, right? The police are sick and tired of it. The thing is, they have no one out there speaking with them. There's no one out there that's really giving them the resources necessary to get their job done, because all these things can be resolved, but I honestly believe they want our communities safe. I mean, they want our communities unsafe so that they can continue to have something to vote on, and that's what I believe.
Absolutely. We've talked about Defund the Police, we've talked about the job rule bill and the impacts that Defund the Police has had onto your community. Let's talk about other issues that are near and dear to your heart. You're a veteran. What are your feelings about, in a sense, I'm seeing, as I've been looking through like the news and keeping abreast with what's going on, that I feel that we're prioritizing, for instance, people who are non-citizens, we're prioritizing them against even homeless veterans.
I don't feel that's the case. I know that's the case, and I see it every single day. And it's funny that you mention that, because not too long ago I was going out in my city, and I was just handing this. I'm not trying to get all grandstandy here, but it's like every now and then when I'm in the area, sometimes I'll buy White Castle, buy food, and kind of talk to strangers out there. And I was talking with this one homeless guy, and this is honestly not my idea. I think it's a brilliant idea, but it was not my idea. He told me an idea that I thought made a lot of sense. There was a building called Straight and Narrow in Patterson that burned down, right? No longer exists. Now, this was a building that was created to help get people back on their feet, right? People that were, dealing with drugs, homeless veterans, and so forth, right? This building just so happened to burn down in the midst of all this overdevelopment that's happening in our community, yet these people still are not getting the resources necessary, but there's more homeless people coming into Patterson. And I said, interesting. So I started speaking with him. I said, well, what has the city been doing for you? What has the community been doing for you? Have you reached out to the congressman or anything like that? And he said, he used to be inside this building. And what this building would do was, it was basically a contract where they made a deal with you where it says, hey, listen, you can stay in this building for up to a year, right? Get your life back on track. You got to go through these programs. You got to learn a specific skill set and then go out and get work. While you're getting work, they would take a portion of that money, save it to the side for you to help you get your car, pay for your driver's license, and so forth, while you're getting your life back on track. Something like that doesn't exist. But you know what does exist? For example, in communities like mine, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of massive vacant factories, massive vacant buildings that no one's doing anything with. Yet there's millions and millions of dollars of grant money that's literally getting blown away. We don't even know where it's going. Patterson recently got a $65 million grant that's supposed to go to public service, and even in the middle of a city council meeting, they had no idea where the money was going to go, but they're in a rush to get the money. And I think that's unfortunate, because all these solutions are practical. Why don't we get one of these buildings, why don't we renovate this building, take care of it, and actually invest in our community? And if not our community, hey, look, we have people that are homeless on our street. What are we gonna do, just put them to the side? Give them an opportunity, give them a chance. Our infrastructure's falling apart. Someone's gotta build it. Someone's gotta fix it. This is an opportunity to get our people right back on track, and I think it's something that could be done across the country. Why not? I don't see that. More specifically, it's something that should be done for our homeless veterans. They put their lives on the lines. They've dealt with all the nonsense so that we don't have to, so that we can even have conversations like this. Yet they're treated like garbage. So I want to turn that around.
Absolutely.
And this, and just something to add, is like this was an idea that was given to me by a homeless veteran. And hearing that and seeing that, I think it's something a lot of people could benefit from.
Billy, you're a first-generation American. How has your family's immigration experience to the U.S. shaped your views on the U.S.?
So when my father came to this country, well, when both my parents came to this country, my father, he raised us not as Ghanaian Americans. He didn't raise us as Black Americans. We were Americans, period. My parents speak a different language. They speak Twi. I understand it. I can't speak it because my parents were adamant about me understanding English and me being American. They came to this country because they wanted to be Americans. They wanted to have an opportunity they didn't have when they were back at home. Even when people would talk negatively about us growing up, about us being immigrants, being the only African dudes on the block, people would make fun of us. And my father would always tell me, listen, kid, we came here so that you could do something that we weren't able to do. No matter what anybody says or does, you're an American, and there's nothing anybody can do to change that. You know, and as a kid, I didn't really understand that until I got a little bit older. And going into the military, coming back and seeing how much my country changed from where it was before to where it is now, I understood why my parents fought so hard to come here. Up until that point, when I was still, I guess you would say, very liberal, I was feeling like I was oppressed, like society was against me. They're trying to hold me down as a Black man. But then when you actually go out into the real world and you see real struggle, real situations, you have I believe there's a new humbling kind of respect you get for America and why people choose to make that kind of journey and why they do what they do, which is one of the main reasons why my mother's one of my biggest inspirations. Like, I think she's the most hardcore person on the planet. And if she ever wrote a book, which I'm encouraging her to do, like I think a lot of people would be inspired to do that the right way, to come into this country the right way. My mother didn't just come here with my father. It was my mother, my father, my youngest sister, my older brother. My parents also were able to bring 14 other relatives to the United States. Every single one of them came in through a legal process. Every single one of them have sworn an oath to become an American and did it the right way. So when I start to see that people feel some type of way, like, oh, I'm going through poverty, therefore I'm going to just come in here illegally. My parents were going through poverty. There was about 10, 12 of them living in a kitchen probably twice the size of this stage. Okay? Yet they still found a way to make it here the right way. So I get it, I feel you, but if you can't make it to America, you're probably better off helping your country get to the next level. And I think that's the God honest truth.
Absolutely. When I was having just a conversation with a woman on the street, I was during a BLM rally, and so we got onto the topic about talking about Trump versus Biden, and I asked her what is a main issue that she feels passionate about, and she told me about how under Biden's administration there's no kids in cages.
I don't want to laugh.
And so that's a misrepresentation that an attitude or perspective that I'm uncovering as I'm doing street interviews as well. And so what are your thoughts about what's going on in the southern border?
The borders are almost 800% over capacity. There's hundreds of children literally on top of each other, most with COVID, that they're just now allowing into the United States. Most of these kids are coming without parents. You've got the Mexican cartel that are coming out and they're smuggling people into there. 1 in 3 women that cross the border are sexually assaulted, raped, or even sexually trafficked. So anybody who supports this kind of stuff, right, at the very least, like if someone's gonna sit down and say they're a feminist, they're a supporter of women or supporter of all these things, how could you say this with a straight face and be totally fine with the border being wide open? When in reality, what we need to do is we need to close the border and we need to ensure that there's a more streamlined process. I would agree with that. For them to come into the country, my relatives, they waited 14 years, which I think is absolutely absurd for the record. I think we do need a more streamlined process, but leaving it open and allowing people to seek political asylum, all it does is it incentivizes the drug cartels, it incentivizes the human trafficking, and it incentivizes women and children being harmed, honestly. And that's one of the main reasons why I take it very personal. I take it very personal, like these human trafficking kind of events. Because some of the people that I know, they're not the same, unfortunately. They're not the same. And when we have something like this just thriving, it just scares me as to what would our future look like if we allow this to continue to happen. Or even let's say they shut the border now and we're able to resolve this issue. All the people that have gone and dealt through this problem, what is the current administration's solution to this issue? There is none. You know, so the border is more than just immigration. It's more than just the children being locked in cages. These are psychological issues that are gonna spill out for decades to come unless it's something that's dealt with. So I'm a firm believer of securing the border. I'm a firm believer of getting the children to their parents the appropriate way, and not the way that they're currently doing this at the border. And I'm a firm believer of streamlining the immigration process, because I agree with it. It is a bit unfair right now, but I don't think leaving the border open is gonna make it any better.
I agree with you there. How about, what are your thoughts as if, when you become a U.S. congressman, sanctuary cities, that seems to provide an incentive also for
100%. I 100% disagree with it. And I think it's funny that you mention that, because there's a couple of Patterson cops that I've spoken with that were interested in even going to the border with me and looking into the situation. We're trying to figure out how we're going to go about doing that. But one of the issues that I have about it is that the sanctuary policies that we have in New Jersey, right? Patterson, for example, city that I live in, is a sanctuary city, right? I've seen it several times where someone will do something, whether it's getting into a fight. I have on video someone almost running over a police officer. It turned out to be illegal. Cop tries to pull him over, can literally do nothing about it because the guy's illegal. And I interviewed the guy, you know, and I'm asking him, like, wait a minute, why did the cop not take your car? I don't understand. And I seen this guy buzz, almost runs the cop over, and he says, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. You don't have your driver's license? No, I'm not supposed to be in this country. And I'm like, that's interesting, because if any American would have done that, if any American would have driven their vehicle, then we'd have a very serious problem. You'd have your car taken, you'd have your insurance increased, and you'd probably get arrested for, you know, potentially killing a police officer for what you just did. But if it happens to American, we're done. Not for them, though. We have policies that have put illegals before the American people. Even the issues that we have in inner cities like mine, and this is something that I say to a lot of the African Americans, in cities like us, you guys know what I'm talking about. We're being pushed out by illegals, and they're allowing this to happen. They're allowing this to happen by design. There's other solutions that can be done, and I think everybody needs to come in the right way. But just allowing it to exacerbate, it's something that we may never be able to fix until we actually secure that border.
Billy, I want to direct your attention to talking about school choice. I know that this is an issue or a topic that has impacted your life growing up. Can you tell the audience more about your story as it comes to school choice and why you're a proponent for it?
So one of the reasons why I'm a supporter of school choice is growing up in Patterson, my parents didn't really know that you had borders and areas where you couldn't really send your children to school. Growing up, we lived in Fair Lawn, New Jersey up until I was 3 years old, and I spent the rest of my life in Patterson. My mom thinking, hey, well, you know, there's schools in Fair Lawn, which at the time were much better than Patterson. In fact, they still are better than Patterson. She wanted us to go to school there, but the second you move to Patterson, you don't live in this district. You have to go somewhere else. Luckily, there was a school that used to be in Patterson, and then eventually ended up being burned down, and they relocated to Ridgefield Park. So we were able to bus out to go to school in Bergen County until I was about in 5th or 4th grade. I didn't really see much of the significance of it and why my mother wanted us to go to these good schools until I was about maybe 10 or 12, and then I went to like one of these public schools. I was a little bit older to figure it out, and I understood why the case was. But when people hear school choice, they typically think you're going to take tax dollars away from the city. You're going to take jobs away from the teachers. You're going to hurt them, and you're going to do all these things. And when it comes to school choice, I look at school choice a little bit differently. I think it's more realistic to say school reform rather than just school choice, because I firmly believe all parents should be able to make decisions for their children's education rather than the school telling you who you can and cannot, who you can and can put in their school system. Even right now, with our schools being closed right now, parents are still paying taxes to these school districts. Yet, we just recently found out that the teachers' unions were the ones fighting with the CDC to actually keep the schools closed. So here's the thing. With our schools, the educations are plummeting. So how do we actually bring it up? Or at least, how do we make our schools competitive, right? So my solution to this was, what are we going to give our children when they get out of high school? Because me, when I graduated high school, I didn't go to college. You know, my father passed away. You know, my brother was going through a very bad situation. I was practically the man of the house. The only thing that was on my mind was join the military. You know, join the United States Air Force, and that's literally all that I had. You know, and I helped keep my family afloat during all of this. Had I had an opportunity to learn a skill or do a skill, I probably would have went something differently. And this is nothing wrong with joining the military, but there were no other options. For a lot of people in the inner city, there's not a lot of options. You can either sell drugs, you better be really good at rapping, you better know how to play basketball, or military, you know? And that was the option that I chose. In our schools, however, we don't have any skills unless you go to college. Right? And even when you go to college, most of our children are drowning in student debt. So why don't we give them a solution before they actually get in? So what I believe is, if we've got plumbers, we've got electricians, we've got people that work in finance, even the nursing field, unfortunately right now, is starting to decline in the middle of this pandemic. People need to fill these roles. Why don't we have our schools, our high schools, fill these gaps? I understand most of these schools don't have the facilities for that, but you know who does? The business owners that are currently doing it. So what I believe should happen is, if you're a business owner, you should get some kind of tax incentive to actually send one of your best men to teach one of these children, or teach the school your specific trade. Once a week, 4 weeks out of the month, 9 months out of the year. If you're a student going through these programs, by the time you're done, you can either start off as an apprentice in one of these career fields that you learn. You can go to college, and if all else fails, you still have skills, or you can come together with your friends and start whatever you want to do and start your own business. It's far better than go to college, go to high school, come out there, and we've already got a very low literacy rate in our district, for example. It's better than going to school, coming out, have no idea what to do, and then put yourself in debt for a degree that you still don't know what you're going to do. All right? If you're going to do that, at least have a backup plan. So what I think happens at this point is, if our schools have something to offer more than just these bad education programs, I believe that none of these teachers and none of these unions have anything to worry about, which is one, but you do have to you have to bring up that curriculum. Because if there's another school that does it better than you, and they're a public school, you got no one to blame but yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's a creative idea, to have the business owners, the local business owners, come in and teach extra classes to students, whether it be after school. It can almost couple together trade school into our regular public education or high school.
The trade schools will probably not like the idea, but that's fine. You know.
Billy, thank you so much for your time here today. Do you have any final words to leave with our viewers, and where can people find you?
So first off, thank you so much for having me on here, Tara. For everybody that's watching this video, I want to say thank you so much for being on here. If you would like to help me get into the Capitol, you can learn more about me by visiting my website at www.billyprempeh.com.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you very much.
We thank you for joining us in this episode of The Capitol on Live One TV. I'm Tara Szczepanski. We hope this will help our viewers from New Jersey to stay informed and to make the right decision for voting in the upcoming 2022 U.S. congressional elections. Billy, thank you again.
Thank you.